taking you nearer to the router.
So here we are live with Jonathon Clark. He's getting
Okay, we're good here.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. So Jonathon was one of the early readers of the Golden Civilization book, and in fact, he did some wonderful editorial work on it. So I'm in great debt to him, and also been a marvelous life planner, 7 stages person. He's been on a mindfulness retreat with me. Has his own, he ran a significant business in ethical investing, socially responsible investing, impact. I don't know what they're calling it now, ESG, I think, and sold that business, and has also had a really deep approach to his Jewish heritage, to the deeper aspects of that, and to astrology. And so and he's just finished and put out a marvelous book, which I've enjoyed greatly, just filled with humorous stories, personal stories, touching stories, and with teaching points about the nature of money and the meaning of money. So really quite a wonderful and a great conversationalist. I look forward to seeing him on every trip, every one of my trips to London. So Jonathon, without further ado, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I love the way you can put a positive spin on anything. I think I had to do about 3 edits of my edits of your book before I could send it back to you, and I was trembling that I'd been too harsh, but it was a very stimulating read, and anything which engages me to the point where I wasn't shouting at the computer, but deeply involved in the argument and the discussion. That level is so welcome. So it was a great pleasure. I suppose, yes, pleasure. It was a great experience to read that book early on, and now to see it out in the marketplace.
Yeah,
Much needed.
Wonderful. Well, it really was. You really read it well, and you gave many wonderful comments and thoughts. And I think there might have been 1 or 2 places where we disagreed, or where I learned from you. And
well, I think one of the things we came up against, and one particularly important point, was the language that still divides us across the Atlantic Ocean, because we had a totally different understanding of what college education for all actually meant, and free education, and in the American terminology that means access to education, and in UK terminology it means grant maintained and the state pays for everything. And once that was cleared up, I was completely in agreement with you.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Yes, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I know one of the things, as we've communicated just a bit prior to this gathering together on Facebook Live,
Yeah.
one of the ways, well, you've just been to a Golden Civilization conversation, one that's fairly well developed, and was really more of hanging out than following the evoked structure, because it was a small group and we were just deepening our own kind of, I think, approaches and understandings. So you have had some experience with that as well. But I know that that one of your deep thoughts, and it comes out clearly in this book as well, is that if we are to accomplish a golden civilization, it really, one of the things that it requires is a different relationship to money, or a different understanding of money. And I wonder if you'd care to share your thoughts with our audience in regard to that, John.
I think money, as apparent in the book, money has been a part of my life since the days when I was counting it out of my little money box at about the age of 5. As I suppose many children do. But it was, I think, during my early training as an accountant that I came across so many different businesses where people had attitudes about money or looked at money differently. And then post-qualification, when I was going around as a sort of financial troubleshooter, looking at various businesses, and I'd come across situations where the figures were absolutely the same, but the emotional responses and the emotional behavior was incredibly different. Context was everything. And that sort of, well, I was already into the financial world by then, but out of those experiences, I suppose in my late 20s, I became more and more interested in what was really going on with money. And it became apparent that money is, to quote the words of the late great Danon Parry, whose work I was privileged to follow for some years, the presenting problem is almost never the real problem. And when people start getting an issue about money, hence the title of the book, it was almost never about the money. It can be about childhood jealousy, it can be about aspiration, sibling rivalry, entitlement, a whole number of things. And I think what we need to do as a way along to the golden civilization is to be able to access and process these underlying issues when we come up against a money problem. I was thinking only recently about an issue which didn't become a story in the book, and it was to do with somebody who had a problem with their washing machine, and the washing machine broke down, and I think it was going to cost him 40 odd pounds, $60 to get the man to come out and fix it. But no, he spent hours in the kitchen trying to fix it because his mother had a whole issue about the relative value of artisans, of blue collar workers, and you really didn't. They were always ripping you off, and you know, you never paid money for them. So the guy spent hours on the floor with nuts, bolts, and leaks before he eventually caved in and said, no, the way forward here is to actually have the plumber come out and fix it for me. So, you know, it was, we get these lessons come up time and again to instruct us in our lives and to help us grow through these processes. So money is just a tool for our development.
So, I'm interested, you know, when your quote from the philosopher about the presenting problem is never the real problem, yeah. In a way, in some way, then what you're suggesting, and it makes an interesting notion that money is the presenting problem. In a way, it's a screen, yeah. Or a mirror that you can see through or see back. And the question is, what is it really? I mean, it's really something then quite magical in a way, and abstract, and yes. And not real the way our jealousy and our fear and all of that are.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. The visceral reactions which we have, and which you describe so well in your stories on the 7 Stages workshop, are exactly those, the reactions that we have. Money is completely neutral. And the idea of the screen is a good one. It's just, we just project it onto that screen of money. Yeah. And we need to take that screen down and own the problems. Then we move to we can regard money as neutral ourselves.
So if we were to do that, I mean, that's really a pretty extraordinary thing. If here we are living with a very significant kind of mirage about the nature of money, and living in the midst of that, and kind of trapped by it, and chasing things from it, and being hounded in other ways by it. Yeah. If we were to clarify that for ourselves, yeah. And clarify it all over the world, what would the difference be? I think
we might have an outbreak of world peace, actually, because all our positions are about, I guess, is about land. It's so much these days. In the era of walls and territory and protectionism and tribalism and protecting our own, it is to produce that, increase our imagined security, and that is why we have the world situation we have today. It's not just the UK and the USA. It's many countries in the same problem, and all on different points of the scale of economic prosperity.
Yeah. So, so I'm compelled by your thinking here, and as always, it's always a delight to think with you about issues of meaning. And I'm wondering, one of the ways that I frame the problem of if we call it that, of achieving a golden civilization, and the notion is not to achieve it in 1,000 years, but to achieve it in a generation, to really go for it and make it
Yeah.
happen. And the way that I often frame it is that there's an inner world that we need to, like the inner obstacle and then the outer obstacle that's larger. And the inner obstacle often is the fear and greed kind of stuff that gets in our way. And then the outer obstacle often includes various relationships to money, and in particular, corruption, political, malfeasance, and autocracy, and all of those abuses of power, those kinds of things, systemic things on the outside. And so I often think that we need to have both an interior practice, which, as you know, I'm a big fan of the mindfulness approach, but also that we need to address systemically. We need to make moves there, or the oligarchy or autocracies that are there, the powerful forces that are there, they're not going to give way, no matter how many of us live a better life inside of ourselves. So I usually frame it that way for myself, at least. How would you, given this notion of money, because money, in a way, the way you framed it, it goes into the interior as well as the exterior, and a transformation of our relationship with it would be really quite profound. How would you frame this task of?
Well, I think it's by say living in the moment, and in being present to all of our actions, and by demonstrating that integrity. What the Bible and Leonard Cohen quoting it calls just weights, just measures, not only, but just as in fair.
Right.
And I remember an incident when I was at a retail factory outlet in New Jersey somewhere. This would be about 20 years ago. And I bought 5-6 items or something. And I got out and I looked at, we were just getting back into the car, and I looked at the check, and I realized that an item had been missed out. So I got out of the car and went back into the store and said, "You've undercharged me by $12 or whatever it was." And one of my traveling companions was sort of like, could not believe what I'd actually done. It was sort of second nature to me. And I don't say that out of any sense of self-virtue. And it's by those actions that we demonstrate to other people the possibility of living in a world of financial integrity. And it's the, you do one, and maybe that, I don't know where that guy is now, we've lost touch, but maybe he tells that story, and somewhere ages and ages hence, I shall be telling this story, to misquote Robert Frost. There's those individual actions in our everyday world that can make a difference. And the challenge, I think, for all of us in the climate in which we find ourselves is to just keep going from day to day, from minute to minute, and say, okay, everything I do has an impact. And indeed, even the energy or the consciousness with which I write a check. It was somebody I know had a long-term alimony commitment to pay over 10, 15 years. And he didn't have he was quite an advanced student. He decided not to make this payment monthly by a standing order from the bank, but to actually sit down and write out the check, and to try and invest that check with as much positive energy as he could each month. And I know he told me sometimes it was easier and sometimes it was harder, but by doing that, he became more connected to the money, and therefore more connected to the feelings and the energy that was around the rather traumatic relationship by which he could help to heal that breach. And that was a conscious decision, rather than just seeing the bank statement come in each month. There was the money gone out, and then becoming divorced from it. So it's unsurprisingly, perhaps we get to the same point. It's about becoming conscious and transacting all our financial dealings with consciousness and with awareness.
Yeah.
Just as it's the in-breath and the out-breath, it's the spending and the receiving.
Yeah.
You know, and you tell that wonderful story at the end of Seven Stages about the newspaper vendor and the little girl and the passing on of the money, but just for the sheer pleasure of seeing her response to finding the dime in the sidewalk. And that is our job as those of us who are working consciously in the financial world, or attempting to work consciously in the financial world.
Yeah, yeah. So it's amazing to me. I mean, you and I come from different traditions, and we've studied deeply, each of us, different traditions, but overlapped in many ways as well. And it's stunning to me that the kind of the finale, your final summation, is really so much about the present moment. They're all mindfulness messages as well, obviously. It's about the present moment, it's about waking up, it's about being aware, it's about being conscious, it's about being here in every moment, it's about having integrity. And as you frame it in that way, I'm also aware that you've done these extraordinary studies in more esoteric systems. And one of them, if I can show this to the community, we've actually got two charts here that are really quite sophisticated, quite subtle, quite complex, and having many virtues within them, and the articulation of many virtues. And since they are appearing there at the end of your great work, what is it? Tell us something about that and how you think about that.
Well, I've been a student of Kabbalah, which is the generally understood, thought to be the sort of the Jewish esoteric system since 1992. And it is actually a set of cosmic principles which underpins all the Western traditions, but is not generally understood to do so. And in writing this book, what I sought to do was to find out how our relationships with money actually fits on the diagram of the tree of life, which you just held up. And I had, I always feel so embarrassed when I say this, I had a revelation one day. I mean, it's about the only revelation I've ever had in my life, but the way in which money fits on the tree of life came to me in a couple of days in 2006. And it was quite clear I had to write about this. To me, this was really what I had to do. And when I walked into your 7 Stages workshop in February 2014, you sat down and outlined the 7 stages of money maturity, and it fits almost exactly on the tree of life. There are a couple of differences, but they're not significant. And the map of mindfulness is simply the tree of life inverted. You put Great Spirit, or you put the Golden Civilization at the top and Great Spirit at the bottom. I would do it the other way around. But really, we mustn't get hung up on mistaking the map for the territory, because all these, unsurprisingly, we just have many different ways of expressing, many different cultural expressions of universal truths. And that's what I recognized in what you've come to through the Christian and the Buddhist traditions, which I've come to through the Jewish traditions. Yeah. And they are, within Kabbalah, we have what are known as 4 worlds. And the world of spirit, the world of creation, Bariah, is the world of universal truths. And the world below it, the world of Yetzirah, the world of forms, describes what is said to be traditionally the 70 different forms of Kabbalah, or 70 different world religions. And we find this in every religion will give you the same truths. So there's the temptation, and I suppose I went through this, and many of us are, say, oh, I don't like this religion I've got. I'm going to change religion. And guess what? You'll find exactly the same problems in the other religion as the one you left. You know, it's the same as relationships. I say in the opening page of the book, my old boss used to say that the grass on the other side of the fence isn't greener, it's just cut differently. And, that was a raw South London wisdom. So we have these different traditions which get us all to the same place. And we follow whichever one we are most comfortable with. That's the idea. because we're born into particular families, cultures, traditions, and there is always a form which is suitable for us.
Yeah, and a couple of things there. One was when I wrote the 7 stages of money maturity, I never thought of any of it as being original. I always thought, well, I'm borrowing over here, I'm borrowing over here, I'm trying to fit things in here so that it works. And one of the systems that I looked at was the tree of life. From the Kabbalah, it's like it has 7 branches or something like that, and so I thought, well, this has got to fit, and it was the one that I couldn't quite get it to fit in the model that I was outlining, and so I'm so glad and so much in your debt that you've done it. You made it happen. So thank you for that, Jonathan. We're all in your debt for that. And I just one other thought about all of this. We know that it's our own greed, our own jealousy, our own fears, our own anxieties that get in the way more than anything. I mean, by our own, I mean each individual.
Sure.
And yet there is genuine oppression in the world. There is genuine starvation in the world. Yes. There is a genuine issue of climate that we really should be addressing in a mature and a wisdom-based way. And sometimes I think that a design like the design from the Kabbalah that you have, or like 7 Stages, or this fellow that I mentioned to you who's coming out with a book, Robert Dellner, who's coming out with a book on integral impact investing, I believe. Sometimes I think that to have a design that really you can see as emerging and flourishing from the human heart should be somehow embedded, not merely in all of us, but inside those institutions that very powerful people can use in ways that are at times abusive and quite frighteningly so when we consider the planet Earth, or we consider the treasures of democracy and how easily they can be diminished. So sometimes I think that having a system like that and implanting it somehow throughout institutional life, so that it becomes codified, and then the CEOs and the investors and all the people in the firm need to also consider that codification of the human heart. You've been active at times. You ran a firm that was significant, really, in England, and really significant in the world for its socially responsible impact kind of investing. And I'm just wondering what you think of that. Is that something that you would concur that we need? In America, we talk about the fiduciary standard and we're just fighting in a very narrow way around getting advice firms to have a fiduciary standard. But isn't there something systemic that could help us move forward?
Well, I think it's very easy when we're in the middle of all this, seeing all the problems, to not actually realize how far we've come. And I've been looking at this, I suppose, really for 30, 35 years now. And just to take a small example, just before we came on, I was looking up that did you ever play hopscotch as a child?
Sure.
Yeah. So the hopscotch diagram is actually one way in which the tree of life is transmitted. It's just a very rudimentary tree of life. Which
I noticed that when I saw the tree of life, I thought, that's hopscotch.
Fantastic. So this was something that became apparent to me about 20 years ago, and I've used it in various workshops and so on. And I just wanted to check something, and so I just Googled tree of life hopscotch, or Kabbalah and hopscotch, and there's like 3,000 hits or 3 million hits on it or something. So, 20 years ago even, that would have been just inconceivable.
Right.
And the number, I was reading about the huge resurgence of interest in astrology amongst the younger age, sort of 18 to 24s. And there is a huge realization that the world could be a bit better than it actually is. And the next generation, we've been the sort of the planters, the seed sowers, and now it will grow. I have faith in that, and I think, as you know, astrologically I'm very optimistic about the year 2026, But before then, we've got a few more clearings away to go, and people will. It's on the increase. You know, there's a ripple out effect. We do this. We have this conversation here. We've been having these conversations for years, and it has grown and will continue to grow exponentially until the moment is right, and the fruit can be picked from the tree, and then that is when it will just be natural for the corporations that are in so much. Yeah, they're in pain. The people in there are in pain.
Absolutely.
And there will come a moment when it can't wait any longer, and so we just got to hang on, you know, and wait for that moment, because you can't. You go too early, then it doesn't work. And so I'm speaking for myself as one of the world's impatient people.
Well, you're
it will come. Change is coming.
Yeah,
change is coming.
Wonderful. Well, Jonathon, thank you so much for your wisdom on all of this. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing, or is that?
Well, I look forward to your next visit, and for you to drag me to another theatre production and another dinner. And you know, people. Yeah, I've heard people have a good afternoon, and they say we must do this more often to the friend they've been meeting. And sometimes it's quality, not quantity. And you know, we pack so much into about 3 hours a year of face-to-face contact that we don't need to get bogged down in the dross of everyday stuff. So I treasure these interactions that we have. This is a wonderful a virtual one, but I look forward to seeing you in the spring in England.
Likewise, Jonathon. We'll do it. We'll make it happen.
Absolutely.
All right. Very good. Love to you all.
Good afternoon, as we will say to you here. It's still lunchtime in America.
Ah, yes, it is.
Good evening to the UK.
All right. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay. Bye.